Welcome to the deep dive. Today, you've brought us into a real classic, one of the most, well, enduring cold cases out there, the Isdal Woman.
That's right, found in Norway way back in 1970. Still unsolved.
And we've got this fascinating stack of material focusing specifically on the Karolinska Institute's 2021 report. They really tried to nail down her age, maybe figure out where she was from,
Yeah, and our goal here, I think, is to really unpack the science they used.
especially that aspartic acid rhizomization, AAR dating.
Exactly, the AR dating of teeth, plus some isotope analysis. We need to see, how much light it actually sheds on this whole baffling story.
Right. Because the first thing that jumps out, looking at this Karolinska report next to, like, the original thoughts back in the 70s.
Oh yeah, it's a huge difference in the age estimate for her. A really significant gap.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How reliable are these modern scientific findings? And what do they really tell us when you put all the pieces together?
Precisely, that's what we need to dig into.
Okay, let's do it. Let's go right back to the start. 1970. She's found. The Isdal Woman. What were the very first attempts? How old did they think she was then?
Well, pretty quickly after she was found in November, I think it was December 1970, a dentistry professor, Giselle Bang,
Bang. Okay.
he looked at her teeth, and using the methods they had then, specifically something called root dentin translucency.
Which is more of a visual thing, right? Based on how the tooth root looks.
Yeah, exactly. It changes over time. So based on that, he estimated her age around 35 years old.
35.
Give or take about 4.7 years. So, the range was roughly 30 to 40.
Okay, 30 to 40, that's the first scientific stab at it. But what about people who actually, saw her, witness accounts?
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting because the pathologist, the one doing the initial examination, he thought she was closer to 25.
25. That's quite a bit younger.
It is. And that younger age seemed to fit better with what most witnesses remembered. The material you sent even mentions the son of a shop owner.
Oh, yeah, where she bought the rubber boots.
Exactly. He specifically recalled her being about 25.
25, okay. And there was police evidence tied to those boots, too, wasn't there? Something about an American woman.
Yes, spot on. The police found evidence linked to an American. She'd bought those celebrity brand boots from that same shop November 18th in 70.
Okay.
And her birthday was just a few days before, November 15th, 1944. So she would have just turned 26.
26, so still right in that mid-20s range.
Exactly. The key thing is the police focus, their search image, was for someone around 25, maybe 26.
Right, which fits the pathologist and the witnesses.
Yeah, not someone pushing 40 like Bang's initial estimate suggested.
Okay, so initial picture, mid-20s. Now let's jump way forward. Decades later, new science comes in. Tell me about the Oslo dental tests in 2018.
Right, so 2018, the dental faculty in Oslo looked at 3 of her teeth.
3 teeth.
2 of them gave an age estimate around 25 years old.
25 again. Echoes the early stuff.
It does, but the 3rd tooth they tested suggested an age closer to 40.
40. Wow, okay. So one outlier.
Yeah, so when they averaged it out, their conclusion was older than 25 but younger than 30. Scientifically, about 27 and a half years plus or minus 2.5 years.
Okay, so still basically late 20s. Interesting. And then came the 2021 Karolinska Institute report.
Yeah.
What did their tests show?
Well, Karolinska also looked at 3 teeth in 2021, but their results showed kind of the reverse pattern.
How so?
2 of their teeth pointed to an age around 40 years old,
40.
and only 1 suggested about 25.
Huh. So they averaged that out to
About 38.5 years. Much older.
38.5. Okay, that's a big jump from Oslo's findings in the early accounts.
It is. But here's where it gets really weird, and the report highlights this.
Yeah.
There was this incredibly consistent pattern.
Uh-huh.
Teeth from her upper jaw always gave an age around 25.
Always 25 for the upper.
Yeah. And teeth from the lower jaw always gave an age around 40.
Whoa, hold on. Upper jaw 25, lower jaw 40 from the same person.
Exactly. A huge difference, consistently linked to the jaw.
That just screams that something's weird with the results, doesn't it? I mean, how does that even happen?
Oh, it certainly raises massive questions.
Okay, let's really get into this AAR method then. How is it supposed to work, and what were the problems with how Karolinska used it here?
Okay, so AAR dating. The basic idea is pretty clever. There's an amino acid in dentin that's the main stuff inside your teeth.
Under the enamel.
Right. It's called aspartic acid. It comes in 2 forms, like mirror images, L form and B forms.
Left and right hand.
Sort of. Exactly like that. And over your lifetime, the L form slowly changes into the D form. It race-mises.
Okay, like a tiny clock ticking inside the tooth.
That's a great way to put it. A slow chemical clock. So by measuring the ratio, how much D versus L there is, scientists can estimate how long that dentin's been there. Basically, your age.
Makes sense. But you mentioned calibration.
Yes, and this is crucial. To make that clock accurate, you need calibration curves, reference points. And ideally, you create these curves by testing teeth of the same type from people whose ages you already know.
The same type of tooth. Okay, I think I see where this might be going. Did Karolinska do that?
Well, that seems to be one of the first big issues. For the Isdal Woman, case 16,
Right.
they used teeth numbered 22, 24, and 25. These numbers mean specific tooth types, like a front tooth versus a premolar. They form at different times.
Got it. Different types.
But for their control case, case 14,
the comparison case.
yeah, they used teeth 18, 33, and 43. Totally different types of teeth from different spots in the mouth.
Oh, that doesn't sound right.
It gets worse. They also note case 16, the Isdal Woman was pre-bomb.
Meaning her teeth formed before all the atmospheric nuclear testing in the 50s and 60s.
Right, which left that carbon-14 signature. Pre-bomb teeth are often better for AAR. But case 14, the control.
Let me guess.
Post-bomb.
Yep. Estimated death year 2002. So you're mixing tooth types and pre- and post-bomb samples for calibration.
That sounds really problematic. It's like trying to calibrate a sensitive lab scale using weights from a bathroom scale.
That's a perfect analogy. It really throws the validity of their comparisons and therefore the age estimates for the Isdal Woman into question.
Okay, big issue number one, calibration problems. Now, what about the fire? Her body was partially burned, right? And didn't you mention boiling?
Yes, two more critical points. First,
Yeah.
the fire. Karolinska seemed to kind of downplay its potential effect on the AAR results.
How so?
They argued that if the fire had affected things, the front tooth, number 22, should have shown a higher DL ratio, a higher age estimate.
Okay.
But the widely accepted understanding in forensics is that heat does speed up that racemization. It messes with the chemical clock. So turning up the heat makes the clock run faster, makes the tooth seem older.
Generally, yes. So just dismissing the fire's potential impact like that seems, well, questionable. It goes against the grain.
Okay. Significant thing to potentially overlook. Now, tell me about this boiling and dye. That sounds bizarre.
It is bizarre, and it's a piece of information that apparently came later from a forensic expert in Bergen who actually found the teeth again in an archive.
He found them and realized.
He realized and informed the Karolinska team that the teeth had been boiled in dye back during the original 1970 investigation.
Boiled.
But boiling teeth,
Yeah.
especially if it was for a while, that would have a major impact on AAR. You're adding significant external heat.
Accelerating that clock again, potentially making her seem much older.
Absolutely. It could lead to artificially high age estimates.
Okay, wait. Could that explain the 25 versus 40 difference?
That's the really interesting suggestion. What if only the lower jaw teeth were boiled?
If the upper teeth weren't boiled, they might show the younger age around 25.
And the boiled lower teeth show the artificially older age around 40.
That actually makes a weird kind of sense. It fits the pattern.
It could potentially explain that specific discrepancy, but the bottom line, as the material points out, boiling teeth like that, it's terrible for accurate AAR dating. It messes with tooth structure, the chemistry.
So those 40-year estimates from the lower jaw are likely junk if they were boiled.
Very likely, yes. Highly unreliable.
Wow. Okay, so we've got dodgy calibration, the fire effect possibly ignored, and the lower teeth potentially cooked. This Karolinska study is starting to look really shaky for case 16.
The methodology certainly raises serious concerns.
And didn't I read something about an AI analysis that it flagged this specific case?
Yes, that's right. Apparently, an AI analysis run on the Karolinska data identified case 16, the Isdal Woman, as an outlier. Meaning the other cases in their study didn't have such a huge gap in age estimates between different teeth from the same person.
So even the computer thought something was weird about her results.
It seems so, yeah. It just reinforces the idea that there's something problematic, specifically with the Isdal Woman findings in that report.
Okay, let's shift slightly. Another factor that affects AR temperature, right? How does that fit in?
Temperature is absolutely fundamental. That racemization reaction, the L to D conversion, it's highly temperature dependent.
Meaning it speeds up when it's warmer.
Exactly. There's an equation, the Arrhenius equation that describes this. The key thing isn't the math itself, but that it shows an exponential relationship.
Exponential.
Yeah.
So even small changes in temperature can have a big effect.
A surprisingly big effect over time. A tooth kept even slightly warmer will age faster, according to the AAR clock.
Okay. So how did this play out in the comparison between the control case and the Isdal woman?
Well, the analysis looked at case 14, the control,
Uh-huh.
and found a very consistent calculated temperature history around 25 degrees, nice and stable. That leads to a stable reaction rate, more reliable age estimates. Makes sense, no fire involved there.
Right. And case 16, the Isdal woman.
For her, the analysis calculated a temperature range from about 26.3 degrees C up to 29.0 degrees C.
So a difference of what, 2.7 degrees Celsius?
Yeah, doesn't sound enormous, does it?
Not really.
But because of that exponential relationship, even that small temperature variation likely caused by the partial burning of her body is enough to explain some of the variations they saw in the reaction rates between her different teeth.
So the fire created uneven heating, which messed with the AAR clock in different teeth.
Precisely. And interestingly, tooth 22, the front one, it actually showed lower ratios, suggesting maybe the heat wasn't just highest at the front, but more localized and varied. A few degrees difference over time can really skew the results. You have to consider the temperature history and where the teeth were, especially with burned remains.
It really paints a picture of just how difficult it is to get a precise age, especially with all these complications.
Yeah.
Fire, maybe boiling. Okay, now, the report also mentioned isotope analysis. What was that trying to find out, and what did we learn? Or not learn?
Yeah, isotope analysis, specifically radiocarbon in this context. The goal is usually geographical origin.
Where she grew up.
Essentially, yes. The mix of isotopes, like different flavors of elements like carbon or oxygen, in your teeth reflects the water and food you consumed while those teeth were forming.
So it could potentially point to a region, like German origin, which was a theory.
Exactly. It could have been a massive clue to the where did she come from question. Could have really helped narrow things down.
Okay. So what did it show?
Well, this is another really big point. For case 16, the Isdal woman in the Karolinska report, the section for radiocarbon analysis just says NA.
NA, as in not available.
Not available. That's it.
Wow. That's a huge piece of missing information, isn't it? Especially for trying to identify her.
It absolutely is. And, as the source material points out, not available doesn't automatically mean the test wasn't done.
Right. It could mean
The results were inconclusive, or maybe contradictory, or maybe they just didn't support a preferred theory like the German origin idea, so they were, well, left out, unpublished.
So we just don't know what, if anything, the isotopes revealed about where she might have been from.
We don't, based on this report. It leaves a major gap in understanding her background, another potential key clue that's just missing.
Man, it feels like every scientific pass we look down here hits a wall or finds more confusion. Something about cavities.
Oh yeah, just a brief mention in the material. A reminder that, ideally, AAR shouldn't be used on teeth with cavities.
Because the decay can mess up the results too.
Exactly. Another potential complication.
Right. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. The Karolinska Institute's report, it came out with these advanced techniques, aiming to give us clearer answers on the Isdal woman's age, her origins.
But what we've actually found, digging into it, is a whole mess of inconsistencies, uncertainties, particularly around her age.
Yeah, that huge difference between the upper and lower jaw estimates, 25 versus 40, it's just so stark. And it really clashes with the earlier estimates and what witnesses thought.
It does. The bottom line seems to be that, despite the fancy science, this report arguably added more confusion than clarity about her age, mainly because of these big methodological question marks.
Right. The way the study itself was done seems problematic.
Definitely. Mixing those tooth types for calibration. Apparently overlooking or ignoring the impact of the teeth being boiled in dye.
Which could completely explain the older age for the lower jaw.
Potentially, yes. And downplaying the likely effect of the fire on the AAR process. It all casts serious doubt on that final 38.5-year age estimate.
A huge amount of doubt. So you end up with this conflicting, arguably flawed scientific picture on one side.
Person behind the case file number, and maybe the limits of science when faced with such a complex old mystery with so many confounding factors.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening to this deep dive, after wading through all this conflicting evidence, the scientific doubts, the enduring mystery, here's a final thought. Given everything we still don't know, What single piece of additional information, if it ever surfaced, do you think would be the absolute key? The crucial breakthrough needed to finally understand the truth about the Isdal woman?
It's the question that keeps people hooked, isn't it? Decades later.
It really is. Maybe somewhere out there, that key piece is still waiting.